The Grand Assembly Hall was the most beautiful place in the galaxy. Giant crystal pillars rose from the floor to the ceiling. Light from 3 different suns came through the windows and made rainbows on the walls. Representatives from 47 different alien species sat in curved rows of seats that went up like stairs. They wore their finest clothes and their most expensive armor. This was the Warrior Summit, and everyone wanted to show their power. Commander Elias Vance walked through the main doors. Everything changed. He was a human. Average height. Brown hair cut short. His face showed no emotion as he walked down the center path toward his seat. But it was not his face that made everyone stare. It was his armor. The armor was broken. There was no other word for it. A massive crack ran down the chest plate like a lightning bolt frozen in metal. One shoulder guard was completely missing. The other was dented so badly that it no longer sat flat. Burn marks covered the arms and legs. Some parts were held together with rough welds and metal patches that did not match the original color. A Zorvathi delegate laughed first. The Zorvathi were tall beings with gray skin and 4 arms. They were known throughout the galaxy as proud warriors who valued military strength above all things. The delegate pointed at Elias with 2 of his hands and said something to his companions. They all laughed together. The sound spread like fire. The insectoid Krell clicked their mandibles in what passed for amusement among their kind. The elegant Allery beings of light and grace whispered behind their delicate hands. Even the stone-faced Velnoxi allowed small smiles to cross their features. The humans sent a beggar to a warrior summit, a Zorvathi ambassador said loudly. He did not try to hide his words. He wanted everyone to hear. He wanted the human to hear. Elias heard. His expression did not change. He simply walked to his assigned seat in the back row. It was the least honorable position in the entire hall, far from the central platform where important things happened. He sat down, placed his hands on his knees, and waited. The Alari delegate next to him shifted away slightly, as if the broken armor might somehow damage her perfect white robes. She did not look at him. None of them looked at him now. They had laughed, and now they were done with him. He was not worth their attention. High Commander Thrax of the Zorvathi Empire stood at the central platform. He was enormous, even for his species. His armor gleamed like polished silver, without a single scratch or mark. It had been crafted by the finest smiths on his homeworld and was worth more than some planets. "Welcome to the 352nd Warrior Summit," Thrax announced. His voice boomed through the hall without any need for amplification. "We gather here to honor those who defend our worlds, to celebrate strength, to recognize true warriors." He paused and let his 4 eyes sweep across the assembly. When his gaze reached the back row, he smiled. It was not a kind smile. "This year, we will do something special," Thrax continued. "Each warrior present will share the story of their armor's greatest battle. We will hear tales of glory and victory. We will learn what makes a true warrior." Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. Warriors sat up straighter. Some touched their armor with pride, already thinking about which story they would tell. Thrax's smile grew wider. He looked directly at Elias. "Perhaps our human guest can explain how his people's finest warrior came to wear scrap metal. I am sure it will be ... educational." Laughter filled the hall again. Louder this time. The Zorvathi ambassador who had spoken before slapped his thighs with all 4 hands. Others joined in. The sound echoed off the crystal pillars and came back even stronger. Elias sat perfectly still. His hands remained on his knees. His face remained calm. Only his eyes moved, looking slowly around the hall at all the perfect, shining, unmarked armor. Beside him, a young Krell warrior clicked quietly. "Why do you not respond, human? Have you no pride? No anger?" Elias turned to look at the insectoid. The Krell had compound eyes that showed no emotion, but his body language spoke of genuine curiosity. "Anger serves no purpose here," Elias said. His voice was quiet and steady. "And pride in armor means nothing to me." The Krell tilted his head. "Then what does mean something to you?" Elias did not answer. He simply looked forward again, watching as Thrax began calling the first warrior to the platform. But if anyone had been watching closely, They might have seen something flicker in the human's eyes. Something old and deep. Something that had nothing to do with pride or anger. It was memory. The crack in his chest plate caught the light from the three suns. For just a moment, it seemed to glow, like a wound that had never fully healed, like a story waiting to be told. High Commander Thrax announced the order of presentations. The most honored warriors would go first. Zorvathi, then Krell, then Valnoxi, then Allery. Down through all 47 species by order of military importance, humans were last. Thrax did not need to explain why. Everyone understood. Humanity was new to the galactic stage. They had only made first contact 60 years ago. Their technology was primitive compared to species that had traveled between stars for thousands of years. Their military was small, their territory was limited, and their representative war broken. Armor to the most important military gathering in the galaxy, the first Zorvathi warrior stepped onto the platform. His armor shone so brightly that it was almost painful to look at. He began his story with a booming voice. Speaking of a great conquest of a mining colony at the edge of known space, Elias listened. His face showed nothing, but his hand moved slowly to touch the crack in his chest plate. His fingers traced the jagged line from top to bottom. He had 3 hours before his turn came. 3 hours to sit and listen to stories of glory and power. 3 hours while aliens laughed at his broken armor and dismissed his entire species as weak. 3 hours was nothing. He had once waited 18 days in armor far more damage than this. 18 days, while things in the darkness tried to kill everyone he was sworn to protect. 18 days while his friends died one by one around him. What was 3 hours compared to that? Elias closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they were clear and calm. Let them laugh. Let them mock. Let them believe whatever they wanted to believe. Soon enough, they would understand. Soon enough, they would know what human armor was really for. The first warrior to speak was Commander Vorthon of the Zorvathi, 3rd Fleet. His armor was beautiful. Silver and gold metals twisted together in patterns that told the history of his family. Gems from conquered worlds decorated his shoulders. Everything about him screamed wealth and power. I earned these marks in the Battle of Epsilon Prime, Vorthon announced proudly. He pointed to a small scratch on his left arm guard. It was barely visible. The mining colony there refused to pay tribute to the Empire. They had only civilian defense forces. No military. No weapons worth mentioning, he smiled at the memory. We descended upon them with 300 warships. The battle lasted for hours. They surrendered when we destroyed their water treatment facility. 40,000 colonists knelt before our might. This scratch came from a piece of debris when one of their buildings collapsed. The Zorvathi delegates cheered. Thrax himself nodded with approval. This was a proper story of dominance and control. This was what the Warriors' Summit celebrated. Elias watched from the back row. His face showed nothing, but his eyes tracked every detail. 300 warships against civilians. A scratch from falling debris. This was what passed for glory among the Zorvathi. The Krell warrior was next. His chitinous armor was black as the void between stars. It was made from the shells of his own ancestors, a tradition his species had followed for millennia. The armor had ceremonial scratches carved into it, patterns that told of successful hunts. I wear the marks of 17 assassinations, the Krell announced. His clicking voice echoed strangely in the hall. Political enemies of my Hive Queen. Each one killed in silence. Each one dead before they knew I was there. He turned slowly so everyone could see the intricate damage carved into his shell. These marks are not from battle. They are added after each kill. Ritual cuts to honor the hunt. More applause. The Krell section clicked their approval loudly. Assassination was an honored profession among their kind. To kill without being seen was the highest art. Elias noticed that the Krell warrior had never actually been hit in combat. His armor had never protected him from anything. The damage was decoration. Nothing more. The Valnoxi delegate walked to the platform next. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and eyes that seemed to look through everything. His armor was white and perfect. Not a single mark anywhere. "I've never seen combat," the Velnoxy said calmly. "My armor has protected me through 1,000 hours of simulation training. I have defeated every virtual enemy our military has designed. My record is flawless." He stood straight and proud. True warriors need not bloody their hands with actual conflict. Strategic superiority means the enemy surrenders before battle begins. My armor remains unmarked because no enemy has ever dared to face me. The Velnoxy section applauded politely. They valued intelligence over brute force. In their minds, avoiding battle entirely was the greatest victory of all. Elias looked at the pristine white armor. 1,000 hours of simulation. 0 hours of reality. The Velnoxy had never felt the fear of actual death, had never watched friends fall beside him, had never tasted blood and dirt while fighting for survival. And yet he spoke of being a true warrior. More stories followed. An Allery general told of a diplomatic victory where her mere presence had ended a conflict. A Threnix commander described how his species' powerful warships had destroyed an enemy fleet from beyond visual range. A Dorsany warrior spoke of hunting dangerous animals on preserved worlds for sport. Each story was met with approval and applause. Each warrior was celebrated. But Elias noticed something, a pattern that became clearer with each presentation. None of these stories were about sacrifice. None were about protecting the weak. None were about facing impossible odds and choosing to fight anyway. Every story was about power being used against those who had less power. Every tale was about the strong crushing the weak. 2 hours passed. Then 2.5. The presentations continued in order of species importance. Humanity remained last. The other delegates had stopped looking at Elias entirely. He had become invisible to them. Just a strange creature in broken armor waiting for his turn to embarrass himself. The young Krell warrior who had spoken to Elias earlier clicked quietly. "You have listened to all these stories. What do you think of them?" Elias considered the question. "I think," he said slowly, "that there is a difference between being a warrior and being a conqueror." Krell tilted his head. "Is there? Both require strength. Both require the ability to defeat enemies." "A conqueror defeats those weaker than himself," Elias replied. "A warrior protects those weaker than himself. The strength is the same. The purpose is different." The Krell was silent for a moment. "That is a strange philosophy. It is a human philosophy." Before the Krell could respond, High Commander Thrax's voice boomed across the hall. "And now we come to our final presenter, the representative of humanity." The tone made it clear that this was a joke, a source of amusement to end the serious presentations. Something to laugh at before the feast began, Human Thrax said, smiling his unkind smile. "Please come forward. We have saved you for last. Surely there must be some story behind that collection of debris you wear." Laughter filled the hall. Louder than before? The delegates were tired from sitting for hours. They wanted entertainment. The strange human in broken armor would provide it. Elias rose from his seat. The laughter grew louder as he walked down the center path. Someone made a clicking sound that his translator identified as a Krell joke about garbage. Someone else wondered aloud if the human had found his armor in a waste disposal unit. He reached the central platform and stepped up onto it. The light from the 3 suns illuminated every crack, every dent, every burn mark, and rough weld on his armor. He looked like a patchwork creature made of broken pieces. Thrax stood nearby, still smiling. "Tell us, human. What is the story of your armor?" "We are all eager to hear." Elias looked out at the assembly. Hundreds of eyes stared back at him. Most showed amusement. Some showed contempt. A few showed curiosity. None showed respect. "You want to know about my armor?" Elias said. His voice was calm and carried easily through the hall. The laughter began to fade, replaced by attention. There was something in his tone that demanded listening. "Very well. I will tell you. But to understand the armor, you must first understand what happened on Kepler 4-4b." He paused. The hall was completely silent now. 3 years ago, I was part of a rescue team. We were sent to evacuate a research station on a world at the edge of human space. 12 scientists? 47 children from the colony school that used the station for field trips. His voice never wavered. And one enemy. An enemy that your galactic coalition had declared too dangerous to fight. An enemy that your species had chosen to abandon entire worlds to, rather than face. Thrax's smile disappeared. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The enemy was called the Hollow. And when they came for those 59 innocent people, humanity did not run. Humanity did not abandon them. Humanity sent 12 soldiers in basic combat armor. Elias touched the crack in his chest plate. I am the only one of those soldiers still alive. And this is the story of why. The Grand Assembly Hall was completely silent. No one laughed now. No one whispered. Every eye was fixed on the human standing alone on the central platform in his broken armor. Elias began to speak, and his words painted pictures in the minds of everyone listening. Kepler 440b was a beautiful world once. Green forests. Blue oceans. The research station sat on a hill overlooking a valley filled with strange flowers that glowed at night. The scientists there studied the local plants for medicine. The colonist children came every month to learn about alien biology. His voice remained steady, calm, as if he was telling a story about someone else entirely. Then the Hollow came. They are a parasitic species. They do not build or create. They only consume. They take over the bodies of other beings and use them as hosts. When they finish with a world, nothing living remains. Several delegates shifted in their seats. The Hollow were known throughout the galaxy. They were feared by every species, and feared things were often abandoned. The Coalition response was standard protocol. Quarantine the planet. Abandon the survivors. Mark the world as lost. That was the official decision of this very body, made by representatives sitting in these very seats. Elias let those words hang in the air. Humanity refused. Thrax stepped forward slightly. The Coalition made a strategic decision. The Hollow cannot be defeated by conventional means. Engaging them risks spreading the infection. Quarantine is the only logical response. I understand your logic, Elias replied. But there were children on that world. 47 children who were on a field trip to look at glowing flowers, and 12 scientists who had devoted their lives to helping others. Humanity does not abandon children. We do not make strategic decisions that require letting children die. He paused. So he sent volunteers. 12 soldiers who knew the risks. We wore standard human combat armor. Not as advanced as Zorvathi equipment. Not as specialized as Krell hunting gear. Just reliable armor designed to protect the person wearing it. Elias gestured to his damaged suit. This was Sergeant Martinez's armor. The original wearer died on day 3. Private Washington died on day 5, and I took parts from his suit to repair the damage. Corporal Okonkwo lasted until day 9. Lieutenant Park died on day 12, saving 2 children from a Hollow ambush. His voice never broke, never wavered. By day 15, I was the last one standing. 11 friends dead. 59 survivors still depending on me, and 3 more days until the evacuation ship could arrive. A young Allery delegate raised her hand slowly. Why 3 days? Why could the ship not come faster? Because the Coalition had blocked all traffic to the sector, Elias answered. Our ship had to come from Earth itself. It had to break quarantine protocols. The captain who flew that ship knew she would be arrested when she returned. She came anyway. He touched the massive crack in his chest plate. This happened on day 16. A Hollow creature, twice my size, caught me while I was moving the children to a more secure location. It grabbed my chest plate and tried to tear it open. The metal held, but just barely. The creature was pulling me toward its mouth when a 7-year-old girl named Sophia threw a rock at its head. Some of the delegates looked confused. A rock? The rock did nothing, of course. But it distracted the creature for half a second. Enough time for me to draw my sidearm and fire into its brain. Sophia saved my life with a rock and courage. He pointed to his missing shoulder guard. This was torn off on day 17. A swarm of smaller, hollow creatures surrounded us in an old storage building. There were too many to fight. I pulled off my shoulder plate and used it to block the doorway while the children escaped through a window. The plate held them back for 30 seconds. That was enough. He traced the burn marks on his arms. Acid. The hollow use acid to break down their prey. By day 17, my armor was failing. The seals were compromised. The power systems were dying. I was using pieces of my dead friend's armor to patch holes and keep myself moving. The hall was utterly silent. Even the Zorvathi had stopped shifting in their seats. And then, on the morning of day 18, my chest plate finally failed. The seal cracked open. I was exposed. Elias reached up and began to unclasp his armor. You asked about my armor? You laughed at its condition. You called it garbage and debris and scrap metal. But you did not ask what happened when the armor failed. The first clasp opened. You did not ask what a human does when there is no armor left. When there is nothing between him and the enemy but his own body. The second clasp opened. You did not ask because you assumed you knew the answer. You assumed that without armor, a warrior is defeated. That the armor is what makes the warrior. The third clasp opened. You were wrong. He pulled the chest plate away and set it on the platform. Gasps echoed through the hall. Several delegates turned away. The young Alari covered her mouth with both hands. Even High Commander Thrax took a step backward, his 4 eyes wide with shock. Ilias's torso was a map of violence. Scars covered nearly every inch of visible skin. Deep claw marks ran across his chest like rivers carved into stone. Chemical burns created patches of twisted, discolored flesh. Puncture wounds formed constellations of healed tissue. He had been torn apart and put back together more times than anyone could count. I fought for 31 more hours after my armor failed, Elias said quietly. 31 hours with nothing between me and the hollow but my own body. They cut me. They burned me. They tried to consume me. He looked down at his scars, as if seeing old friends. But I did not fall. I could not fall. Because every time I wanted to give up, I heard the children crying behind me. Every time I thought I could not take another step, I remembered that Sophia had thrown a rock at a monster to save my life. How could I do less for her? He looked up at the assembly. The evacuation ship landed on the morning of day 19. 59 survivors boarded that ship. 12 scientists. 47 children. All alive, all safe. He gestured to the scars covering his body. This is what human armor is for. Not for display. Not for ceremony. Not for glory or pride or conquest. Human armor exists to protect the innocent. And when the armor fails, humans protect the innocent with their bodies. With their blood, with their lives. He picked up the broken chest plate and held it in front of him. You laughed at this armor because it is damaged. But every mark on this metal represents a moment when it did its job. Every crack and dent and burn is proof that it stood between danger and the people I swore to protect. This armor saved 63 lives. The 11 soldiers who died in it would be proud of every scar it carries. He set the armor down gently, almost reverently. That is the story of my armor. That is why I wear scrap metal to your warrior's summit. Because to humans, the purpose of armor is not to remain beautiful. The purpose of armor is to be destroyed so that others may live. The silence in the hall was complete. No one moved. No one spoke. No one seemed to breathe. Elias stood alone on the platform, his scarred body exposed to every eye in the room, and waited. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. No one in the Grand Assembly Hall knew what to do. They had come expecting entertainment. They had expected to laugh at the primitive human in his broken armor. They had expected to feel superior instead. They felt something they had not expected to feel. Shame High Commander Thrax stood frozen near the platform. His 4 eyes kept moving from Elias's scarred body to the broken armor on the ground. His mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. For the first time in his long career, the great warrior had nothing to say. The Zorvathi delegates, who had laughed loudest now, stared at the floor. Their own perfect armor suddenly felt wrong. It felt like a costume rather than a badge of honor. Not one of them had ever sacrificed anything for someone weaker than themselves. Not one of them had ever chosen to stand. Between danger and the innocent, the Krell warrior who had spoken to Elias earlier rose from his seat. His chitinous body clicked and shifted as he moved down the aisle toward the platform. The ceremonial scratches on his armor seemed hollow now, decorations added after kills made in shadow. What was assassination compared to standing alone against monsters for 18 days? He stopped at the edge of the platform and performed something no Krell had done to an outsider in 300 years. He bent his body low, tucking his limbs beneath him, and pressed his head to the floor in the deepest form of respect his species knew. "I have killed 17 beings in darkness," the Krell said, his voice carrying through the silent hall. "I have never saved a single life. Today I have learned that I am not a warrior. I am merely a hunter. You, human, are a warrior." More movement in the hall. A young Allery delegate, barely past childhood by her species standards, stood up from her seat. Her mother reached out to stop her, but the girl shook off the hand and walked down the aisle. She was small and delicate, with skin that glowed faintly silver. Her robes were pure white, untouched by violence or hardship. She had never seen true conflict. She had never known true sacrifice, but she recognized it. When she saw it, she walked directly to Elias and stopped in front of him. She was so small that she barely reached his chest. For a moment, she simply looked at the terrible scars covering his body. Then, slowly, she performed the Allari gesture of highest respect. She pressed her forehead against his scarred chest. Among the Allari, this gesture was reserved for those who had given everything in service to others. It was rarely performed. It was never performed for outsiders. Elias looked down at the small alien child pressed against him. Gently, carefully, he placed one hand on top of her head. "Thank you," he said softly. Her mother had followed her daughter down the aisle. She stood nearby, tears forming in her luminous eyes. "My daughter was born during the Hollow Threat," she said. "We evacuated our homeworld when the creatures came too close. We left behind those who could not move quickly enough. We abandoned them to save ourselves." She looked at Elias's scars. "Well, you stayed. When everyone else would have run, you stayed." More delegates were rising now. The Valnoxi warrior who had boasted of his simulation victories removed his pristine white armor and left it on the floor. He did not deserve to wear it. He had never earned the right to call himself a warrior. A Threnix commander approached next. Her species had fought wars across 100 star systems, but always from the safety of their massive warships. They destroyed enemies from beyond visual range. They never saw the faces of those they killed. They never risked themselves. "We have forgotten something," she said quietly. "Somewhere in our long history, we forgot that strength means nothing without purpose. We forgot that the measure of a warrior is not how many enemies he destroys, but how many innocents he protects." She bowed to Elias in the Threnix fashion, spreading her wings wide and lowering her head, one by one. Warriors from different species approached. Some bowed. Some knelt. Some simply stood before Elias in silence, unable to find words for what they were feeling. The hall that had echoed with laughter now echoed with the sounds of movement and quiet recognition. The young Krell warrior, who had first bowed, rose to his feet. "I have a question," he said. "Why did you not tell us this story immediately? Why did you let us laugh at you?" Elias considered the question. "Would you have believed me if I had simply told you? Words are easy. Anyone can claim to be brave. Anyone can tell stories of sacrifice. But when you saw my armor and laughed, you showed me who you truly are. And when I removed my armor and showed you my scars, you could not deny what you were seeing." He looked around the hall at all the silent delegates. "I did not come here to make you feel shame. I came here to show you what humans believe. We believe that the strong must protect the weak. We believe that armor is meant to be sacrificed so that others may live. We believe that a warrior's honor comes not from victory, but from the choice to stand when others would run." He picked up his broken armor and began to put it back on. "Your species are older than ours. You have technology we cannot match. You have power that we can only dream of. But power without purpose is empty. Strength without sacrifice is hollow, and armor that has never been tested is just decoration. The clasps closed one by one. The damaged chest plate settled back into place. The missing shoulder guard left his left side exposed. But somehow, wearing that broken armor, Elias looked more impressive than any of the gleaming warriors in the hall. Humanity is new to this galaxy. We are small and young and weak by your standards. But we have something that your species have forgotten. We have a reason to fight. We fight for the children who throw rocks at monsters. We fight for the scientists who want to make medicine from alien flowers. We fight for everyone who cannot fight for themselves. He stepped down from the platform. That is what human armor is for. That is why I wear scrap metal. And that is why, no matter how much you laugh at us, humans will keep fighting. We will keep sacrificing. We will keep standing between the darkness and the innocent. High Commander Thrax finally found his voice. He stepped forward slowly, his movements uncertain in a way that his soldiers had never seen before. He stopped directly in front of Elias. For a long moment, the two warriors simply looked at each other. The Zorvathi in his perfect silver armor, the human in his broken and patched combat suit. They could not have been more different. Then Thrax did something that no Zorvathi High Commander had ever done before. He reached up with all four hands and removed his ceremonial cape. It was woven from metals that changed color with every movement. It was worth more than most starships. It was the highest symbol of Zorvathi's military honor. Passed down from commander to commander for over 1,000 years, he draped it over Elias's scarred shoulders. "We have been measuring warriors by the shine of their armor," Thrax said. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the entire hall. "Humans measure warriors by the lives they save." He paused, and when he spoke again, there was something new in his voice. Something that might have been humility. "Perhaps we have been measuring wrong." The Grand Assembly Hall had changed. The air itself felt different, as if something ancient and stale had been swept away and replaced with something new. Delegates who had sat and ordered rows by species importance now stood in mixed groups. Talking quietly with beings they had never spoken to before, Elias stood near the main doors, preparing to leave. Thrax's ceremonial cape still hung from his shoulders, the metal threads catching the light from the three suns. He had tried to return it, but the Zorvathi commander had refused. "It belongs to the greatest warrior in this hall," Thrax had said. "Today, that is you." Several young officers from different species had gathered near Elias. They peppered him with questions about human military training, about Earth's history of warfare, about the philosophy that put protection above conquest. He answered each question patiently, explaining ideas that seemed obvious to him but revolutionary to his listeners. The Allery child who had pressed her forehead to his chest sat nearby with her mother. She had not left Elias's side since her gesture of respect. Every few minutes, she would look at him with wide, glowing eyes, as if she was seeing something wonderful that the adults could not quite understand. "You saved children," she said simply when Elias caught her looking. "You saved children like me." He knelt down to meet her eyes. "I did, and I would do it again. That is what humans do. Will you teach others to do the same?" The question was innocent, but it carried weight that the child could not have understood. Elias looked up at the delegates still filling the hall. Species that had conquered and destroyed and abandoned were now questioning everything they believed. "I think," he said slowly, "that others are already beginning to teach themselves." The Krell warrior who had been first to bow approached. His compound eyes glittered in the sunlight. "Human, I have decided something. When I return to my homeworld, I will speak to the Hive Queen. I will ask that our warriors be trained in your philosophy. Protection instead of assassination. Sacrifice instead of silent killing." "That will not be easy," Ilias replied. "Your species has followed a different path for thousands of years. Then we will walk a new path. Paths can be changed. You have shown us that today." More delegates approached to say similar things. The Velnoxy warrior who had abandoned his pristine armor asked about joining human training programs. The Threnix commander spoke of changing her fleet's mission from destruction to defense. Even some of the Zorvathi officers expressed interest in learning the human way of war. Elias listened to all of them. He did not promise anything. He did not pretend that change would be quick or easy, but he acknowledged their words and thanked them for their honesty. High Commander Thrax approached last. The great Zorvathi warrior looked diminished somehow, though his body was still enormous and powerful. It was his eyes that had changed. They showed doubt now, uncertainty, perhaps even regret. "I have led armies across 100 worlds," Thrax said quietly, so that only Elias could hear. "I have conquered species that you have never heard of. I have earned more honors than any Zorvathi in 3 generations." He paused and looked at the broken armor Elias wore. "And yet, today I learned that I have never truly been a warrior. I have been a bully with an army. Nothing more." Elias considered his words carefully. "You can change that. It is not too late. Can I? I am old human. I have done terrible things. How does one become something different after so many years?" "One choice at a time," Elias replied. "The next time you have to decide between conquest and protection, choose protection. The next time you can abandon the weak or defend them, choose to defend. One choice at a time, until the choices become habit and the habit becomes character." Thrax nodded slowly. "One choice at a time. That is surprisingly simple. Simple does not mean easy." "No, I suppose it does not." The Zorvathi commander straightened his posture. "I will try, human. For whatever my promise is worth, I will try." Elias extended his hand in the human gesture of respect. Thrax looked at it for a moment, then reached out with one of his 4 hands and gripped it firmly. "Go well, Commander Elias, Vance of humanity," Thrax said, "and know that you have done something today that no weapon could accomplish. You have changed minds." Elias nodded and turned toward the doors. The young Alari child ran up to him before he could leave. She asked, "Will you come to the next summit?" He looked down at her glowing face and smiled slightly. "Perhaps, if I am still alive. There are many places in the galaxy where people need protection." "Then protect them," she said with the simple certainty of childhood, "and then come back and tell us about it." He touched her head gently, then walked through the great doors and into the corridor beyond. A young coalition officer was waiting for him. The officer was Velnoxy, tall and thin, wearing a simple uniform instead of armor. "Commander Vance, I have been assigned to escort you to your ship. But first I must ask a question." Elias nodded for him to continue. "Your armor. It is badly damaged. We have repair facilities here that could fix it completely. We could make it as beautiful as any armor in the galaxy. You would not have to wear broken metal anymore." Elias looked down at his chest plate. The massive cracks still ran through it. The burn marks still covered his arms. The shoulder guard was still missing. It was ugly and damaged and held together with rough welds. It was perfect. "This armor did its job," he said. "It brought everyone home. Why would I change that?" The officer did not seem to understand, but he nodded politely and led Elias toward the docking bay as they walked. They passed groups of delegates still discussing what they had witnessed. The word human was spoken again and again, but the tone was different now. There was no laughter. There was only something that might have been the beginning of respect. Elias reached his ship an hour later. It was small and practical, designed for utility rather than beauty. Much like his armor, he paused at the boarding ramp and looked back at the great building where the Warriors' Summit was still in session. He thought about Sophia, the girl who had thrown a rock at a monster. She was 12 years old now, living with her family on a colony world far from Kepler 4 for 2b. She sent him messages sometimes. She was studying to be a doctor. She wanted to save lives, just like he had saved hers. He thought about the 11 soldiers who had died wearing armor like his. They had known the risks. They had volunteered anyway, not for glory or honor or conquest. For the chance to bring children home safe, he thought about the scars hidden beneath his armor. They would never fully heal. They would remind him every day of what he had survived and why. They were not marks of shame. There were marks of purpose. He walked up the ramp and into his ship behind him. In the grand assembly hall, the warrior summit continued. But it would never be the same. Something had shifted in the galaxy's understanding of strength and honor. Something had changed in how species thought about the purpose of power. And it had all started with a human in broken armor who refused to be ashamed of his scars. The ship lifted off from the Coalition station and turned toward the stars. There were other worlds out there. Other people who needed protection. Other battles to fight and other children to save. Elias set his course and engaged the engines. His armor was broken. His body was scarred. His species was young and weak and small, but humanity had something the galaxy had forgotten. Humanity had purpose. Humanity had heart. And humanity would never stop fighting for those who could not fight for themselves. That was the human way. That was the warrior's way. And today, the entire galaxy had learned the difference.